So here you are, a player brand new to Yu-Gi-Oh! And upon you is a ritual event based around a summoning mechanic that you've probably never even used. So anyone who's relatively new to Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially through the likes of Master Duel, has probably never ritual summoned in their life, which is a bit of a wild thing. But there is now a ritual event on which essentially forbids the usage of most of the extra deck as well as most main deck archetypes, and keyword on most, because if you're that category of player and you don't want to learn how to play ritual monsters, well, I've got the deck for you. You guessed it, it is Vanquish Souls. I know I've made a couple of videos on this deck already, but I'm absolutely loving playing this deck. It feels like the new Punk. It gives me that same sort of vibe whenever I'm playing it. I absolutely adore playing it, and it's actually pretty damn viable in the event. They only really limited your usage of the extra deck monster. Ignore the fact that I'm sparkling out of existence. I decided to wear a green t-shirt on a green screen. You're probably not going to see this next scene. That all ran for some reason. But essentially, the only monster they limited with Vanquish Souls was their Link monster. So this is a fully functional list for the event, specifically fully adhering to their guidelines. Of course, we do have to make a couple of changes. There were some different ideas I was testing out as I was putting this together. For example, you might see the Rescue Ace cards in some of the replays, but we ended up abandoning that idea. It wasn't terrible, it just didn't feel super consistent all the time. So yes, this is the list. If you're a fan of Vanquish Souls, or maybe you're just not a fan of ritual summoning, this is definitely a deck you can play instead. It's really, really effective. We were absolutely just bullying people in the event. Now, is it the best deck in the event? I don't think so. I think the burger deck is like the chef, whatever the hell deck, is definitely better than this one in the context of this event. And it is definitely one I'm going to be making a video on very soon. I just have to learn how to play it a little bit better. But expect a video on that probably tomorrow or at the day after, it depends. But yes, I'm not going to ramble on here at the beginning. If you are new to the channel and you want to catch any more content like this, feel free to subscribe. We're going to be going through a few replays, then doing a card for card profile at the end of the video. So if you want to see that, tune in at the end. And like the video if you actually enjoy watching, and you can check the description below for links to our Discord, our DVNR page, our TikTok page, Twitter page, all that fun stuff if you want to get engaged for free with the rest of the channel, or maybe even join as a member to show extra support. But I'm not going to bend your ears here at the beginning. Let's just get straight into the replays. Alright, getting into game number 1 here. We're going to be going first to start off. Normal summoning the Razin. This is pretty much a golden hand right here. We're going to go for Stake Your Soul, revealing a dark to summon a dark, summoning out the Dr. Mad Love, searching our deck for, of course, the Snow Devil. Now, that is pretty much the whole setup, but we're going to go one step further, summoning out Jiao Long to the field, bouncing back to Razin a hand to summon out the Heavy, just so that we have 2 fires in hand to reveal for our Jiao Long's effect to grab ourselves a Caesar Valius. Caesar Valius then going to bounce back to Dr. Mad Love, so we have a dark in hand to summon itself out to the field. Now we're going to use the Dr. Mad Love. We're going to draw a card, hitting Tactics. Now we're going to set 2 and pass. Now our plan here, of course, we only have a fire and dark in hand, but we're simply... My plan was, of course, to use Jiao Long to search my deck for a dark monster not at the hand, but because we're just that guy, we're just going to draw one. Why not? We're going to reveal 2, search our deck anyway, grabbing another heavy burger because we literally had nothing else valuable to search. We have such a stacked hand right now. They're going to go Alternative White Dragon, attempting to pop the Caesar. We're going to use our Impermanence on that because now I cannot attack that it's declared. Now that it's activated its effect, it cannot declare an attack, so we're totally safe there. They're going to go for the Dictator of D, sending a Blue Eyes to summon itself. We're going to use the Caesar, revealing Pancratops and a fire and a dark to pop the Dictator before it can use its effect. Sage of Eyes of Blue going to send the alternative to the grave, or at least it would if we didn't have anything to say about it. We're going to flip up the Snow Devil, revealing all 3 key attributes in hand. Now we're going to summon a Vanquish Soul from hand, inflicting 400, 600, and 800 while wiping the board of all non-Vanquish Soul monsters. Razin gets searching, but again, look at the absolute decimation and look at everything we have on our hand to go into the next turn. Like, that is like pretty much a golden situation with this deck. If you see a hand anywhere remotely approaching that, you're literally unstoppable, right? We had so many valuable pieces in our hand and on our field that we were literally running out of good pieces to search for and good pieces to draw. We had literally everything. But not every game goes like that, so let's get into game number 2. Alright, getting into game number 2 here. Going first, yet again, this was a replay involving the Rescue Ace cards. Now, as you can see, not exactly an intimidating board. And this is part of the reason as to why we took the Rescue Ace cards out. They were good, in certain situations, but there were also other times where they just felt super clunky, and I just didn't really like them, right? They're going to kaiju us immediately, which is interesting. They're not actually playing Wakanko though, they're playing Megalith. They're going to tribute off their Ophiel. Ophiel going to activate its effect. Ash Blossom on pretty much any of the Megalith level 4s is pretty detrimental to their plays. Megalith is one of those decks that have a fantastic sort of burst game, but they're not exactly the great at drawing out a game. So generally speaking, if you can weather the first turn, maybe even 2 turns, you're generally fine. We are going to go for the Rescuers here. Megalith full, going to target a monster in the grave, copying its level, changing itself to a level 8 while grabbing the Phallic back to the hand. We're going to use the Fire Attacker, drawing 2, dropping 1. Hell of a set of draws there. They're going to tribute off their Ophiel for their before then activating its effect, wiping the board. But again, because we interrupted his plays, he does not have the ability to press for a significant amount of damage, so we're able to walk away from that turn relatively unscathed, especially considering what's in our hand. This hand is disgusting. We're going to start with Raigeki, wiping the board. Get rid of those stupid rocks. Now we're also going to be able to use Stake Your Soul, summoning out Dr. Mad Love from the deck because we have a Dark in hand, using its effect to get searching. We're going to grab the Quick Play spell to give us some interruption. We're going to use the Heavy Burger, summoning it out to the field, revealing the Dr. Love to draw a card as well, drawing into an Infinite Impermanence, normal summoning Dr. Love, which in hindsight this was a stupid idea because it means we no longer have a reveal. So maybe don't do that if you're in this position. Make sure that you're keeping monsters in hand so you can reveal for your Burger and things during your opponent's turn and draw additional cards, because the advantage definitely matters a lot more than the additional 1200 points of damage. So small mistake from me, just letting you know so that you don't make that same mistake. They draw nothing, which is very common for Megalith. Unfortunately, we also draw nothing, and this wouldn't have been a problem because if we had Dr. Madlove in hand, we would have been up an extra 2 cards because we would have drawn during our opponent's turn and then once during this turn as well. So massive misplay in normal summoning this. It's honestly extremely detrimental. So we just swing for our damage, we pass yet again. This game could have been over, but we did mess it up, and I don't want you guys to make that same mistake, so I wanted to talk about it here. They're going to go now for the Megalith, whatever the hell that was, to summon out Megalith full, then targeting a monster in the graveyard, copying its level. They're going to activate Infinite Permanence, targeting it. It's going to chain its second effect to it to basically quick play Ritual Summon, but because it's still a level 2, it can only summon a level 2, so it's going to bring out another copy of full, but both of its effects are hard once per turn, so they simply pass. Now here we decide, you know what, we weren't going to BM, and then I realized that, wait a minute, I'm not a good person. I totally am going to BM. We're going to grab Razin, using Stake Your Soul, summoning out the Xiao Long, revealing a fire to change its battle position to attack mode, swinging in for 2000 damage over the full. Now that could have been over a turn or 2 earlier if I had smartly used the Heavy Burger's effect, keeping the Dr. Madlove in hand, so do bear that in mind. Super important that you act mindfully with this deck. Blind summoning and blind comboing is not the way. So just bear that in mind, essentially. But let's get into game number 3. You know me, ladies and fellas, man. Third and final, saving the best for last, up against Gishki Sprite here. A really powerful deck in this event. We were still at this stage using the Rescue Yes cards. I'm going to talk about those during the deck profile. Summoning out the Xiao Long in a bench, Razin back the hand to summon out the Heavy Burger. Going to reveal 2 cards so that we can inflict 500 points of damage, basically. And then we're going to reveal, of course, the 2 fires off of our Xiao Long. We're going to then grab ourselves the trap card. We're going to set that and we're going to pass. So our opponent unfortunately didn't use any cards, so we didn't have the ability to go for Throne, but we do have an Impulse in hand, which is still useful. We have a Search in hand on the field, or at least we did, and we no longer do. Now that is a pretty massive problem, is because now we no longer have a Dark in hand, so we can't use the full effect of the Vanquish Soul cards. In the main phase 1, they're going to go for Duster right off the rip. We're going to have to go for the Vanquish Soul. We're going to reveal 2 attributes. We're going to inflict about 1000 damage to our opponent. What that essentially allows us to do is summon a monster from hand and make our Vanquish Souls indestructible for the rest of this turn. So our opponent starting off really well. Razin gets Searching. We're going to grab a Dark now, so that at least for the next turn we're able to grab something. We're going to draw a card off of Burger, which unfortunately is just another Burger. They're going to go for Thrust into Talents into the draw 2. Again, I had predicted this play a million miles off. A lot of these players are just totally readable, totally predictable. They're going to go for the Grimness here. We're going to go for Impulse from the hand. The Royal Rare being met with Call by the Grave. I suppose there's only so many times you can draw cards before you draw into exactly what you need. Starting off with Thrust, Heavy Duster into Talent, and now Called by, and his 1 card starter in the form of Grimness. absolutely nutty hand from our opponent. They absolutely had the bee's knees there. So they're going to summon out the Abyss, searching their deck for the Vision. They're going to special summon out the red, going to use the Gishki. I think that one's Vision, isn't it? It is, yeah. Going to use the Vision to grab the Nirmanis, whatever the hell. They're going to use Shadow to grab the Necromirror. Necromirror then, unfortunately, tributing off our Heavy Burger to summon out their Nirmanis. Nirmanis is a bit of a threat, but it is specifically a monster negate. They're going to take 3,000 points of damage, and let's keep an eye on those life points, because remember, we can inflict quite a heavy amount of burn with this deck, so he's putting himself in dangerous territory. Into the battle phase, he can only attack ritual monsters during this turn. Not that any of his other monsters were big enough to get over Razen, but basically on his board so far, what he has is 2 monster negates. What do we have? We have Thrust, and we just top deck into the perfect card. Bringing out Big Pank, special summon, tribute off, target on Nirmanis. Getting negated by the Sprite Rate is entirely the plan, and my monster is ringing an echo all over my desk because that's how echoes work. Let's go for Thrust into Raigeki. Raigeki then, of course, able to just instantly wipe the board. They go cross out. My heart drops, but they don't play Raigeki. Play is clear. Board wiped. Game over. Easy as that. I'm not gonna lie. When I was playing this game, I was playing this live in a Discord call with a number of different members of the Discord, and my heart hit the floor when he flipped up Crossout Designator. I said to myself, there's no way this man had Grimness, Duster, Thrust, Called By, and Crossout in his opening hand. Physically, no fucking way. Sure enough, he did, but he didn't have the Raigeki in deck. He was almost that guy. But I'm not going to ramble too much here. Let's get into the actual deck itself. Alright, so the deck you're seeing before you now is slightly different to the last one that you saw in the games there. Again, it's pretty much identical, and we were playing this one immediately afterwards. Basically, what we changed is we took out the Rescue Ace cards. So let's talk briefly about the Rescue Ace cards, right? If you want to have a super heavy detailed breakdown of all like the Vanquish Soul cards, we've already done that once or twice on the channel. So what I'm going to do is, instead of, you know, bending the ear of anybody who's already watched those videos, I know those videos are pretty popular, so a lot of people watching this probably already have. Instead, if you're new, I'm just going to be putting a link to that towards the end of the video. I'll put it on screen so it's big and easy for you to click, but do listen to this part first because this is important in the context of this event. So, Rescue Ace. What exactly were we playing for Rescue Ace? We were playing a grand total of 4 cards. We were playing 3 copies of Impulse, and we were playing 1 copy of the Fire Attacker. Now, why exactly were we doing that? Essentially, we wanted more fire monsters, and that's essentially it. Doggoran is banned, not that I have Doggoran, but essentially the Impulse is a monster that can tribute itself when your opponent activates the effect of a monster in the field, and it will allow you to special summon a Fire Ace monster from deck, so you get to summon out the Fire Attacker. Fire Attacker, if your opponent adds a card to their hand, you get to draw 2 and then discard 1. So the whole idea here was that it's essentially a fire monster that you can reveal for the effect of your cards, and it'll tag itself out into a Fire Attacker, which is not only a big body on board, it also allows you to draw additional cards, hopefully drawing in any missing attributes that you were for your key card effects. So it definitely has merit, and I definitely, if you have the cards and you really like Fire Ace and you really want to test it out, it is actually pretty good, and there are some times when it saved me. It's just that more often than not, I felt like the Impulse was useless, and drawing into the Fire Attacker was utterly painful, right? I would rather draw a Psyframe Driver, and that's saying something. So that's ultimately the reason we ended up cutting it, and we swapped it out instead for additional kaijus. I wasn't running the Sticky String Kaiju. We sort of felt like we almost had too many fire monsters at some point, so I decided, instead of stocking up on loads of fire monsters, I decided to go for some earth and go for some dark. So we weren't initially playing DD Crow, and we were initially only playing 1 copy of the Sticky String Kaiju, so we bumped up the Kaiju to 2, dumped in a couple of DD Crows, and I think we bumped up the Dr. Madlove to 3. I was initially playing her at 2. And those ratio changes made the deck quite a bit more consistent, in my opinion. I definitely think the effects that you had were going off much more often. So yeah, I think the changes that we made definitely worked in terms of making the deck a little bit better. So in terms of the auxiliary cards, we have the double DD Crow, the double Kirakara. Kirakara is absolutely amazing. If you haven't crafted this card and you have any intention of playing Vanquish Soul, do not handicap yourself. 100% craft this card. I'm almost certainly going to pick up a 3rd copy when we go into our next pack opening on our next stream. A very minor pack opening, but pack opening nonetheless. Ash Blossom, of course, is still legal in this event. It's a fire attribute monster, which is perfect, and it's really good against many of the, not necessarily top tier strategies, but it's really good against many of the sort of mid to rogue tier strategies in the event. So Ash Blossom is definitely worth running 100 million %. 3 Razin, of course, 3 Dr. Madlove, 1 Pantera, only 1. You need to play her because she's searchable and she's Earth and she's Vanquish Soul and blah 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 blah, but just really not that good of a card because she doesn't generate you any additional advantage. The popping of back row is sometimes useful, very very rarely, but sometimes I'll give her that. But really, you don't want to be seeing this card nearly as often as you want to be seeing the other two, in my opinion. And the triple Jiaolong, you can play this guy at 2. Again, initially I was, but I bumped it up to 3 because I really, A, wanted to see fires in my hand, which he definitely qualifies for, and B, if I could not use my Razan search on him and use it for something else instead, usually I found myself in a much stronger position, especially with the Heavy Borker, who I'll skip ahead and tell you I'm playing 3 of. Basically, the idea is that if I open Razan and either one of these guys, I'm guaranteed to be able to go into the 2-fire reveal Jiaolong effect. I'll definitely have 2 fires in hand and this guy on the field. That's the idea. So the more versatility, the more of these guys you see in your hand, the more versatility you have with your searches, and the more versatility you have with your searches, the more attributes you can guarantee that you'll have at your disposal, and thus then the more powerful each of your individual card effects will be. That's the idea. It's a consistency game. So running all of your big cards at 3, I think it's almost mandatory, to be perfectly honest. You can get away with 2 Jiaolong, you can get away with 2 Heavy Borger, you can get away with 2 Dr. Madlove, but damn, you better be replacing them with cards of the appropriate attribute, because otherwise you're going to be struggling. Double Kaijus, because Kaijus are pretty dope. I would probably play additional copies of Pankratops if I had them. If I had more copies of Pank, I would probably only play maybe 1 Kaiju, maybe not even play it at all. I would maybe run 2 or 3 copies of Pankratops, because this guy is the fucking MVP. This guy's dope. I'm really tempted to just run him in my regular Vanquish Soul decks. This guy is fucking baller. Easy summon, 2600 beater, can quick play tribute himself to pop an opponent's card. It's an Earth attribute monster as well, which you're notoriously low on in this deck, and Caesar does love himself an Earth reveal. So Pank is 100% one of the boys when it comes to Vanquish Soul, especially in a meta where you don't have the Fenrir, right? So a lot of people equate Fenrir and Pankratops. Fenrir can feel better in a lot of situations, if I'm being perfectly honest. But Pankratops also takes the edge in certain situations as well, so it's not quite that straightforward. I do think I would prefer to play Fenrir, purely because Fenrir can search and generate additional advantage. That is literally it, but Pankratops is a close second. And then the double Caesar. You can play this guy at 1 if you want, you can play it at 2 if you want. I think without the Link 1, you definitely feel the hit to the consistency of some of your combos. So being able to have additional copies of your boss monster for when they inevitably deal with the first copy, which they will do more consistently in this version, and it's significantly harder to recycle than it is in the regular version. That's why you can get away with 1 in normal Vanquish Soul, because you can bring it back off your Link. In this version, you can only really bring it back if you're playing the Continue spell card, and I'm not a huge fan of this spell, so I typically don't play it, meaning it's essentially, if you lose it, it's lost, right? But that's just me. We got Raigeki, we got Feather Duster, we have Dark Ruler No More specifically for Makonko. It's here as a thrust target, it's here as a prosperity target. It is literally only here because Makonko is a pain in my ass. I'll take the fact that I can't kill you this turn, and I will 100% wipe your board and diminish your resources down to the ground in exchange. So Dark Ruler No More, I think if you're playing in this ritual event, Makonko is a pain in the ass. You need to have counters to them, and Dark Ruler No More is the counter that springs to mind. Triple Tactics Talent, of course, as a thrust target. Prosperity as a standalone card and thrust target is fantastic. We're just playing a bunch of bullshit cards in the extra deck to banish off for its effect. The additional search is definitely like the additional draw or search or whatever the hell you want to call it is definitely very heavily appreciated when it comes to picking up cards of particular attributes or picking up a particular board breaker. So yeah, I think Prosperity is almost a must run, to be perfectly honest, especially in this event where you don't have the consistency because you don't have the Link 1. So Prosperity is almost a must have. And again, same story as Dark Ruler No More. You will 100% very gladly let them have one more turn in order to set up and maintain control of the board, because to be honest, your Vanquish Soul cards aren't really the best for pushing for no DK or pressing for one turn lethal anyway. So why try to feed into a weakness when you can instead play on their strengths and sort of stick to your guns and win the game the way the Vanquish Soul wins games, and that's through advantage and control and crushing and ensuring that you have more weapons in your arsenal than your opponent does. Thrust, because it searches for any of these board breakers, that's why we're able to get away with playing one of everything. Then we have 3 copies of Stake Your Soul. Card is broken. Reveal a monster in your hand of any given attribute of the 3, and then summon a Vanquish Soul from deck matching the attribute, which is just insane. This was one of the biggest benefits to having the Rescue Ace package. It meant you virtually always had the ability, if you had Stake Your Soul in your hand, to summon out a Razin from your deck. Now, it was phenomenal, right? You always had it because you always had like at least a Rescue Ace or a Kurakara or an Ash or something, right? You always had it. But we didn't... It's not as if now that we've removed the Rescue Ace cards that it's that less common that we have it. Or if we do have Stake Your Soul, there's a decent possibility, of course, that we already have Razin or the ability to grab it as well already. So it's not mandatory that you go in the Razin off of this. It's just exceptionally helpful. We have the one-off Imperm because it's Imperm is a good card. Great target for, again, Thrust if you need it. I would maybe be tempted to, if you want to go like more impactful, which sometimes is sort of the way you want to go for some of these events. You might want to go for someone like Daruyuma Cannon, which is kind of neat. I kind of like Daruyuma Cannon sometimes. I think Ice Dragon Prison is a really good one in this event. The only deck that this kind of struggles against is like the Burger deck. I think, I mean, those are the main ones, really. I would say, realistically, yeah, the only other cards I was really considering was D-Prison, is the biggest one, if I'm being honest. But there's quite a number of cards you could put in here, and the reason I'm mentioning it here specifically is something that a lot of people don't realize when it comes to these events, is that the overall power level is lower. Now, you would assume then that you don't need to have as many super powerful cards in order to deal with it, whereas what you need to do is you need to acknowledge the opposite. The reason you play low impact but consistent cards in a powerful meta is because you need to always be able to do something, because if you do not, you will die. You will lose instantly, right? That is why you do that. You sacrifice impact for consistency, because if you don't do anything, then you will lose. In the events where you're dealing with an overall lower power, weaker metagame, an individual hand trap isn't the end of the world, or at the very least, sorry, an individual hand trap, it's not super impactful, but if you don't have one, it's not as if you instantly lose the game. There's a lot of times, even just free engine, you can claw it back. So why not take the advantage of the overall lower power of the meta, of the cards in play, and play cards that are guaranteed to generate you maximum impact upon being played, to claim as many wins as they could possibly claim, because you're not going to die if you don't draw Imperm. You're not going to die if you don't draw Ash. That's what I'm trying to get at, right? You're not going to die instantly if you don't draw these cards. But if you do draw the likes of Ace Dragon's Prison in a Megalith matchup, you instantly win. Do with that information what you will. I'm just spitting facts. I'm just sort of putting down how I look at it, and maybe that's not an opinion that you've heard before. Maybe that's something that you may find useful in terms of contextualizing your deck building, because I know a lot of people sort of struggle with that sometimes. But yes, I'm not going to sit here and ramble on anymore. If you want a full detailed breakdown of the Vanquish Soul cards and how to play them, you can check the video right above my head, and I'll give you more useful tips. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, like the video if you haven't done so already, if you got this far into it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.